Though the weeping lasted all night, I know that joy comes in the morning light. So I march on to a new song, 'cause I've been marching to that old one way too long. And I gotta move on and take new steps every day, 'cause I know there has got to be another way. And I'm brighter day, so I march on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pure Live. This is a part two of a show that we started before, Black and Blue, People in Turmoil. And today we're going to have Minister Joseph McNeil with us, but we will also have Doctors Aaron and Margaret Jamal joining us as well. We're waiting on them to get in. So right now we have Minister Joseph McNeil.
Hello, praise God. Thanks for having me this evening.
Welcome back. How are you this evening?
I'm very good. I'm blessed. Things have been crazy. I'm grateful I got to go to D.C., spend some time with family. My mom turned 70 years old. So my siblings, the siblings, the grandkids. So had a much needed break, and I needed it because it is popping right now, around here in Chicago land. So I was grateful to take a break.
Telling the truth. Oh my goodness. Facts. Okay. Yes, indeed. So everybody understands where we're at right now. So the last time that we had Minister Joseph McNeil on, we were discussing what it has been like for him being an officer of the law and an African American, and dealing with these particular times and with the Black Lives Matter movement going on. And we ended with interesting discussion with Dr. Aaron Jamal, which is what motivated us having a part two, because we weren't able to complete that conversation. And there was much more to discuss. So I hope you guys get into the conversation. I am monitoring the comment section. Please ask questions, statements, whatever it is that you want to do. But at the same time, please understand that when I say I am monitoring the comment section, that means I will not allow any foolishness. Amen. Okay. Praise the Lord. So please join us on this conversation, and we're going to get in and get started. Since we have had the last episode, some things have happened. So let's start with the positive. Well, they're positive to us anyway. On the Democratic side, we have good old Joe announced his running mate. And she is African American female, which I think is awesome. Okay. All right. Okay.
Now that I believe God love, what are we gonna do? That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. I've been,
all right.
I've been struggling pronouncing her name. Is it Kamala or Kamala?
She said Kamala, so that's what I'm hearing, Kamala.
Okay.
So praise be to God. Hallelujah.
Yes, Vice President Harris. Yes.
Yes. So please understand, people, I still love you. If you are Republican, it is okay. It is all right. But it is still an awesome milestone for us. You know, like we already had our first African American president, which was Barack Obama, and now we got a female African American. Hallelujah. Okay, so it may be vice president, but still first and first. Hallelujah.
It's very exciting.
So
it's very exciting. That's dope.
It is very exciting. So with that, I'm hoping and praying that some great changes will come out of that situation. That's what I'm praying for. So at the same time, some craziness has been going on. Just like the last time when we were discussing, there was some craziness going on then.
Right.
So for those of you that don't know, that are watching, that are listening in, I'm from Illinois. I am from Chicago, Illinois. Minister McNeil is also from Illinois.
Shout out.
All right. Doctors Aaron and Margaret Jamal are also from Illinois. So we like to keep a beat on what's going on in our hometown. And it has been ugly. It has been ugly lately. One of the things that has happened that has kicked off some horrific rioting is there was a police officer involved shooting. And before the correct information was able to get out, people went off. They lost their minds. The police that were sent to help calm things down were attacked. And it was just a really an unfortunate situation. The pictures, the footage, I mean, if you guys haven't seen it, it hurt my heart. It really did, because I felt like it hurt the movement. So when the facts came out, I didn't really hear any apologies. But the facts is that the young man that they were dealing with actually was armed and did fire at the police, and the police fired back. And unfortunately, he was shot. And the police were harmed as well, and all of this mess. And yeah, I got to take a breath.
The young man is alive. He's a 20-year-old. He is alive. He's doing okay. He's recovering.
So praise God for that. I am glad. People, we got to do our research, is all I'm saying. Before we react, respond instead of react. Respond instead of react. So I think Doctors Aaron and Margaret Jamal are trying to come back in as they get themselves together. We're going to get things started. First of all, this is what I would like to do. What I want us to do is to talk about what the issues are that we're dealing with. Let's see if Dr. Aaron and Margaret Jamal are ready. Hi, Dr. Aaron and Margaret Jamal. How are you?
Hi. All right. You hear us well?
Yes.
We hear you. This
good to see you.
All right.
Thank God for being.
Yes, he will.
All right. Y'all look good too, by the way. Okay, everybody looks good and happy. Hallelujah.
We came to work.
All right. I hope everybody's ready and prepared for this conversation, because it is a tough conversation. So this is what I want us to do first. I want us to first establish what the issues are that we are actually addressing. So first, I'm going to mention a few things, and then I'm going to have you guys add in to what it is that I'm saying.
Okay.
So first of all, we have a situation with the negative relationship that we have right now between the minority communities and the police. That is in the forefront right now. Which is what kicked off the Black Lives Matter movement. That situation, that relationship. We have the the violence that is going on in the minority communities as well. And there is the systemic breakdown of how things are not working right now and fixing these issues. So there's a lot of blame to be thrown around in many different directions, in many different areas, but facts are facts. So the facts are there's systemic racism that is at the very forefront and at the very root of the ugliness that has happened with some of the situations in regards to the police and the minority communities. That is a start. That is definitely not the full picture. So I want you guys to help me fill in the blanks, and then we will discuss some solutions in filling in those blanks and to figure out what's going on and how we can do better. Okay? And first of all, I want to do a better introduction of everybody. So Doctors Aaron and Margaret Jamal, will you please tell everybody who you are and what it is that you do?
Okay, that's how you do it. All right. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having us. Appreciate that, Asia. And so they, as far as using the, what we do is part of what we do. We do a number of things, but my doctorate is in human services. And I would say that what I pursue in general is really encapsulated, by just human services, helping other people. Together, we're marriage coaches. We help nonprofits to develop their organizations. We also deal very heavily into media, being able to get messages out using anime or animation, because we found that we can, just address a number of topics in a way that people can understand and break it down to them using the animation, using the music, using the sound. Media, we believe, is very powerful. I'm a happy mother and happy wife, and grandmother and all of that. And so and have authored a number of books in that category, including, just helping people to address social illnesses. And I'll stop right there because I was not prepared to do this. That was my 1 minute speech in 3 minutes.
All right, Dr. Aaron Jamal.
And a minister of the gospel, which is probably right up. Should be right there.
Boom. Amen.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Jamal.
Well, I'm not going to go through all of the things it is that we're doing. I mean, what she said is accurate in terms of the things it is that we're connected to. As it relates to what this topic is, we have been socially active for all of your life, for sure. I would say our biggest inspiration and advocate to do something about our circumstances came with our mother, with her, Reverend Hazel Ford, in terms of what it is that she did to connect with the community, not just connect with the community in terms of issues that were upsetting to them, but actually being a help source as well, a resource for those it is that didn't seem to know where else to go, and an advocate, be it an advocate to the police, an advocate to the court system, advocate to even as far as the medical field. Wherever it is there was a need, we found that she was active in those areas and steered us as much as well. I should say it's inspired us as much to follow that lead. And so my influence, if you will, has been varied. We've been connected not only on the political standpoint, but we've been, I was the president of I should say CEO of the Illinois Clergy Association. And in that scenario, again, there was a fundamental need in addressing the social issues that the clergy were coming together with. And so we've been focused on this for a long time. Having said that, the issue of policing and the strategies that have been systemically not only racist in terms of the approach is concerned, but have been those strategies have been used to hold back African Americans from actually becoming what the potential was for us for a long time. I'm not going to go through a history lesson right now, as much as to say
Okay,
what
because I wanted to actually finish the introductions before we get into that.
Right. We didn't know she was going to do that. Did we know she was going to do that?
Know that.
Okay. We know where you live, and we know your phone number. We'll get you about that. But go ahead.
Okay, come on over. I invite you. All right, Minister Joseph McNeil, please introduce yourself for everyone.
Yeah.
Good evening. Hello, guys. My name is Minister Joe McNeil. I minister at Living Grace Church as youth director. I've been in ministry, going on pretty much my entire adult life. I actually became a police officer at the age of 22 years old, been serving the village of Dalton for the last 18 years. I grew up pretty much during the crack pandemic, saw a lot of issues in our culture, and wanted to be a part of some real change. So that's when I decided to serve my community. I lived in Dalton actually a couple of years before I became a police officer. Unfortunately, shortly after I became a police officer, I saw that what we do doesn't work. I saw that what we do as police officers is not effective. So I've tried to get involved in other avenues as a police officer, community services, activism, mentorship. I even began a mentorship called Speak Hope Incorporated. Well, I try to go to schools to encourage our young people that regardless of our environment, that we can take advantage of our best talents and our best gifts that God has given us and be what God has called us to be and overcome. The reality is, that's what we've all done that's on this show right now. We've overcome our environment. Yeah. And I believe that is something that our children really need to hear and learn in today's time amidst all of this racism and all of this really negative and just toxic environment. We need to continue to share our stories, share our mistakes, share our failures, and share our victories, and how we got to where we are and how we became successful people that we are. I think it's really encouraging. I think that's really important.
Agreed. All right, so let's dig into the conversation. So first part of this situation and what has fueled the whole Black Lives Matter movement in dealing with the history with that, I think Dr. Aaron Jamal was starting to get into some of that. So if you can kick us off with what it is that you wanted to talk about in regards to that topic, please go ahead, Dr. Aaron Jamal.
Well, okay, so my thought and my experience has been there has been a dehumanizing factor that has somehow catapulted a different type of response to whatever it is that is happening within the African American community or happening to us where we are traveling, because when it is that we're pulled over, it's a different experience, a different attitude than if it is that our white counterparts are pulled over and dealt with. And it's unfortunate that we have been powerless to change that dynamic because the policies have been set up at such a high level that no matter how we protested, it was basically neutered as just, well, they're just always violent anyway. And so they're just complaining about being caught as though they never do anything wrong. I'm not talking about just whites in general. I'm saying even the police themselves that are supposedly holding us accountable. One of the most traumatic experiences that I had to experience as a child was the result of me exposing myself and a friend of mine exposed they were Chicago police at the time that were actually security guards. We used to be in Robert Taylor homes, and these particular police officers had raped the girlfriend of my best friend. And so we went to the police station to tell what they had done to his girlfriend, reported them. And in once it is that we did that, we were then immediately retaliated against by the same police officers that we were telling on. And they did a pretty good job of beating up on us, to put it lightly. And at the time, I mean, we were very young. I was
What happened to
11 and 13 years old. 11 and 13 years old is what we were. And they came against us pretty hard, beating us with things to the point that we weren't sure that my friend was actually going to lose his eye because of the way it is that they hit him with the blackjack. The way they hit him with it, it actually hit his eye, and it was scarred so badly that they thought he might lose his eye. So that's just a short story of that exposure that we had to abuse of power, if you will, because there's no question that the police had power in the neighborhood, and we even respected the fact that they had power. But it was the abuse of power that we were subjected to whenever they felt like it. And if we ever protested, then there was a problem there. So the idea of the role of the police officer ever being one that we could trust, the way I grew up, the people that I knew, none of us had that kind of trust, period. We saw the police as part of the enemy.
That's rough. That's rough. So, you know, without even talking about their age, you know, we got a couple of different generations going on here. So, bottom line is, this is not a new problem.
No, not at all.
So, Dr. Margaret Jamal, did you have something to say? And then I want to throw the ball to Minister.
Well, the thing is, okay, and just as he said, moving forward, and he has spoken about our mother, Reverend Hazel Ford, and we got to know policemen, Chicago policemen, from a different perspective. And we were with, I can't think of it, the superintendent, and there were policemen in that area who tried to work with us. And so it was the ministers and, the clergy in general, as he was speaking and about, and they actually were trying to help us to get people involved in reentry programs. And we met a number of officers who we believe genuinely wanted to improve the community. And they admitted that they were having a hard time. There was an area that we were living in that they said, as far as Lawndale was concerned, that's where we were living and that's where we were ministering and had our program. And they said that a lot of the new policemen would come there to that area just to get experience because it was one of the highest crime areas, period. And the thing is that many of the policemen or the officers didn't try to eliminate the crime there, but they tried to mitigate it. They tried to negotiate it. And they said the biggest problem that they had is that the community did not trust them. So what we were trying to do is help to bridge the gap between the community, between dealing with the distrust and dealing with the police force. But then they said they had situations where the gangs were problematic. And so people would not tell on the gang members or the people who were committing the crimes, one, because they were afraid of them, and they didn't trust the policemen, because when they called the policemen, the police would tell the people who called them. So we had that dynamic happening. And it was just a handful of the ministers or the people in the community who were not afraid, who helped, in some areas of the community. And I think that that's probably one of our biggest challenges that I'd like to even hear the minister speak to is the situation where it seems like in certain situations, police are in cohorts. They're hanging out with, joining and helping the criminal in the community. And they're helping to keep the violence going on there. It's like they are a part of the problem. And so could you even speak to that? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I do believe that there are some good policemen that want to work and help the community. At the same time, I believe that there are people who are profiting from the crime and the criminal element and the violence. So what do you think about that?
All right, Baltimore Court, Mr. McNeil.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a great question, and it's unfortunately it's a very loaded one, right? So first of all, while we understand systemic racism, while we understand these policies and laws put in place to target people of color and poor people, there's also an element of individuality. All right, individual departments and individual police officers. So when we talk about police officers in this very general, broad stroke, then basically you have right, like your like yourself. I had a good experience, and then like the good doctor, I had a very bad one. Right now myself, I had both. And what's funny is I had my good ones at a young age, and I had all my bad ones after I became a police officer. Everything from arrests, from guns being put to my head, and so on. And it's after I became a police officer. So I got both sides of the spectrum, right? And this is how many of us are kind of aligned. You got different experiences, and our experiences kind of determine and dictate our perception of the relationship with the police. So I say that to say, when we start saying, well, are the police in cahoots or not, or are they genuinely concerned or not? The reality is, the answer is, you got to ask the specific police officer, because it's very difficult to tell. For I've worked with several police officers in my career that we were from the community. We had an investment in the community. We had loved ones and friends in the community. So we wanted to make a difference. While also at the very same time, like the good doctor was saying, that there were others that were just taking advantage of what was going on. They didn't necessarily want to stop it. They just wanted to build their career off of it so they can build stats and say, see, look at the felony arrest I have. And now here's an opportunity for promotion. Here's an opportunity for another assignment. So you do have these elements that do exist. And this is why I continue to push this idea, as difficult it is for me to say this, because personally, I can't wait to retire. I'm gonna be honest. I personally, I don't want any of my children to policing, because it's not only dangerous, it's very thankless, and we live in an environment where if you're a police officer, unfortunately by some, not by all, but by some, you're seen as the enemy. That just goes along with the territory. I accept it. But it's very difficult to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I've been blessed by godly people, extremely supportive people, to allow me to continue to push through and help me become a better person instead of becoming toxic, like many of our officers become. They become toxic when you don't have the right environment around you to help uplift you. You know, it's like being a garbage man. The garbage man eventually starts smelling like garbage, right? If he isn't cleansed and cleaned all the time, get a good deep cleaning every time he comes home, it's hard to get that garbage thing. And no disrespect to our sanitation workers, I'm just giving an analogy. And this is what happens to the job. Unfortunately, people don't call the police when they're having a party and a celebration. They're not calling the police to say, hey, come get some barbecue or come to our wedding. They're calling the police during the worst moment of their life. Somebody's being robbed, somebody's being attacked, somebody's being injured. Help, right? And we get there and we see some of the worst sides of people, and it does affect us, because no matter what training we have in the police academy, I would go sidebar. People talk about the police academy like you go in and you become something else. Like you're no longer a human being. Like, hey, didn't you go to the police academy? Didn't they give you like superpowers at the police academy? No, no, you didn't get superpowers at the police academy. Okay, all right. You come out and you get some training, you learn some defensive tactics, but your humanity, right, including those self-conceived notions of people, right, whether you're prejudiced or racist, whether you have an issue with women or whatever, they stick with you. That's not something you get as a cop. That's something you got before you became a cop. Now, I give this analogy: money and power are very similar. You heard the analogy: when somebody get money, they don't become, they become more of the person they already are. It's the same thing with power. When you get power, you become more of the person you already are. So if you're a racist, you're a racist with power. If you're a misogynist, you are now a misogynist with power. you become more of who you are. If you are someone that believes in social justice, you will be more of that person, right? And for myself, I have suffered at the hands of coworkers, of supervisors, of authority figures, of politicians, because I've taken a stand for social justice. I wasn't trying to be popular. I was adhering to my Christian beliefs because I put my Christianity before any other identity that I have. And because of that, yes, I've been targeted. Yes, a couple of times I've been ambushed, got a broken leg to prove it. Yes, I've been through a number of things, but I thank God that I'm not deterred. And we need people like yourselves to continue. When I say we, I'm talking about you have good officers that are unfortunately on the fence because they get treated poorly. Remember, this is still a human being. And this is my experience. My trajectory changed because of the people that I found myself around. People that invited me into their homes, into their hearts, into their families. Yes, Black people invited another police officer they did not know, they didn't have a previous relationship with, loved on me, helped me through my divorce, which was the most difficult thing I've ever been through, and made a man out of a 22-year-old some 20 years later. That was my experience. And so when I talk about other African Americans being police officer, the caveat is that African American police officer with the relationships with the community, relationships with his family that continues to support him, that he doesn't forget who he is because folk will continue to remind him, you belong to us. Yeah, that's your job. You belong to us. Yeah, those are your colleagues, but you belong to us. And what the blessing for me was, I started worshiping and ministering in the town that I was a police officer in. So I could never escape the people that I love. I could never. They were there. It was always 1 or 2 degrees away from them. This was somebody's son. This was somebody's grandson. This was somebody. So watch this. I had to make sure I checked my behavior because I didn't want to go to church and be like, yeah, that was my niece. I didn't want to deal with that. So that was an accountability that was very, very effective for me as a young police officer, learning what it was to be a police officer. It was extremely effective because they held me accountable. And watch this, I wanted the accountability because I was trying to figure out what a man was, right? I'm 22. I was legal, but I didn't grow up with a father, so I'm still trying to figure out what masculinity and manhood is. So I'm bringing all this back to say when we start talking about police officers, my hope is that one, we talk about them individually. I know that's difficult when you see the same instances happening again and again and again. And whether you believe it or not, the Black police officers who are socially conscious, they are hurting too. Like, they don't get to take off their Blackness when they put a uniform on. They're still African American. They still have family members and loved ones who are afraid. They're still afraid for their children to get pulled over. I have 5 children. I have 3 boys. I'm a big man, so I got big kids. My sons are big men. Actually, my youngest son is 13. I'm 6'4". He's taller than I am. Okay. He doesn't look 13. And I'm in constant fear. I'm in constant fear that he will have an encounter that will cost him his life. I have nightmares about this. I have my son, who's an adult. He's around my height, but he's another Black man. Constant fear. And I'm gonna tell you the truth. I tell them, you get stopped by the police, tell them your father is a cop. Let that be the first thing to come out your mouth, because they will be treated differently.
Well, that's what everybody should say.
I'm with you.
My father's let's see if it works, everybody. Try that.
I was telling my
father's a cop.
The folks that went to church with me, I always told them to tell whoever they got stopped by, tell them you go to church with Joe McNeil. I would always say that. I would say it all the time. Listen, I don't care what you're getting stopped for. Say, hey, how you doing, officer? I go to church right up down the street. Officer McNeil goes to my church.
And they broke your leg, Officer McNeil.
They did. I took the hit. And I probably took the hit for people that I love, but that's all right. I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'll take
Well,
that hit
well,
to someone else.
yeah. Let's bring it back around here though.
Sure.
So all of us are saying, well, I haven't said what I've dealt with, but I've had my negative experiences as well. So all of us have had our negative experiences. We talked about the fact that the Black Lives Matter movement has been launched due to what's been happening, the violence between the minority communities and the police departments, and us just dying and being killed for unjust causes. With that being said, there's the other side of it that you were speaking on, that I think even Dr. Margaret touched on, that the ones that are trying to help are also being attacked. And the police officers are being attacked. So what has happened, that we talked about with what happened in Chicago, that's not the first time that's happened, where something went down, all the information didn't go out. It was, it's another shooting. The police is taking us out again. Boom, explosion, riots everywhere. And then I've heard different people say different things in regards to whether or not the rioting is helping or hurting our cause. So already having the understanding that there is a racial component to it, with us already having an understanding that there is a severely damaged relationship between the police departments and the minority communities. Is it beyond repair, or can we actually come together and do something about it? It seems like Dr. Aaron Jamal wants to say something about that. Go ahead.
I do. I do have hope. And, the scriptures helped me in life in general. One of the scriptures that I've held on says, I am forgetting, which is a continuum, right? I am forgetting those things which are, present tense, behind me. Okay. Yeah. The reality of it is that it's a continual thing that we have to do as a people, to forget those things that have occurred, because when you're talking about the riots and things like that, it's never just the thing that happened. It is actually that thing on top of those things that causes people to say, I've had it, because they've not been able to forget those things. And the reality of it, even if they thought they forgot it, they need to continue to forget it, because it keeps surfacing again. Every time something else happens, it resurfaces and you have to forget it over again. So forgetting those things that are behind me is a continuum that is difficult for a lot of people to negotiate with. You say, is it possible? It is possible, but it's not easy. And it's difficult to do it if you're not seeing something hopeful, okay? I think there was a great deal of positive that was infused into our community when, say, President Barack was elected, right? But that didn't necessarily change everybody's daily lives, okay? And because there were still these things, these incidents that were happening, they began to resurface those things that had already happened to them in their lives that they were already very angry about. I'm not trying to get on a pulpit here. I don't want to start preaching. I think it is imperative that we go to the only source that can bring about healing. Jehovah Rapha is the healer. We are not going to heal ourselves. That's the truth of the matter. These things that have happened to us have etched scars that are very deeply rooted. And so I'm not just talking about Black people now. I'm just talking about people in general that are hurting. There are some on the other side, period, wealthy whites, that they got their own issues as well. I hope that we as a nation began to heal. That healing is not going to come on our own. And if it is that we find the comfort to heal, we find the strength to love. And in finding the strength to love, we find a way to communicate a different type of language, a different way, and even expectation of what's going to happen. I heard Minister Joe talking about how it's difficult for him. I got to ask this question, and real brief. What would you say is the percentage of officers like yourself that you know of?
Very low.
Very low. Okay. Having said that, we're just talking about a police force that is in a minority, right? And yet we're profiled as black men. You said it yourself. You're also profiled as a black man, and we can't take this blackness off.
Right.
And that being the first impression, the first picture in the mind of this person that's pulling us over and the only reason they're pulling us over is because of that first impression in the first place. Because if it were white, they wouldn't even bother to pull us over, period. Okay, it wouldn't even been a thought. But when they see this first impression black person, there is this idea of something going wrong that they need to uncover. Another situation where I was pulled over, they had pulled me over for assaulting a white guy. White guys in the back seat. They bring me over to the car and they say, "Is this him?" And he said, "No, that's not him." And the guy that had me said, "Well, he did something." And they still detained me, even though the guy had said, "No, I wasn't the one." Again, there is this perception that we as black men have done something they need to hold us accountable for and actually punish us. That needs to change.
You know, I say something about that, and I agree with you. At the same time, it's like we've adapted it ourselves, where black people are actually scared of black people.
I agree.
You know, you'll see black people who will like see some white people and they're fine with walking on the same side of the street. But even black people are avoiding black people. We stereotype ourselves. That fear that has been, and I believe that's why I think media is so important. I believe that the media has perpetuated it and we've embraced it. Even when you have, certain music, and I know you're probably going to hear a whole bunch of stuff about that. If the music is glorifying the thug life, and I'm going to kill you, and then I'll be you rich, and all this kind of stuff. If the music is glorifying that, and people who don't know better are saying, "Yeah, this is the way black people are," the media is perpetuating it. How do we expect people to see us any other way? I mean, I understand that we should have, but I believe that even we among ourselves are perpetuating the negative stereotype. And so we're trying to say everybody else look at us differently when we look at ourselves that way. I think that we have to start from the inside and start loving ourselves and start seeing ourselves differently. I really believe, and I believe that we need to treat the issue mind, body, and spirit. We need to be healthy in every area. I'm just going to say this about the mental health. If you oppress a people too long, too hard, they're going to be sick. They're going to have mental issues. I think we are, in many cases, a community of people who need good mental health care, right? And let me just say this one thing about they talk about the looting and the violence and everything. How many of us have gotten so angry, right? We were just so upset that we just tore up a room, through paper, through glasses, through everything, right? A lot of us do that. That doesn't make us criminals, but what we're seeing is communities who are tearing up the neighborhood. The anger is just boiling over, and people are saying, "Well, these people are just horrible." It's not just people are just horrible, but people are angry. People are frustrated. People are destroying, because that's what happens when you feel like you get to the point where you just can't take it anymore. And the day after that, weeks after, people will look at it and say, "I did all that. We did all that. That's messed up." And it hurt the very people in the community that are experiencing it. But what I'm saying is we got to realize that there's a symptom of a whole people that are hurting and that have issues. And I believe that in order for us to even address the relationship with the police, we have to address and acknowledge that we have issues within ourselves.
I agree. I want to say something about that as well. Then I'm going to go ahead and let you say something.
Go ahead.
Oh, and hi Norman. He said hello. He said, "I'm in here. How are you doing?"
My nephew.
So one of the things I wanted to say is I feel like there is a chain of learned behavior that has to be broken. And the learned behavior that we have going on is on all of the sides that we're mentioning. You know, we're talking about the racism. We're talking about the way that we show ourselves as a people,
Yeah.
the way that and the way that we respond to the things that are happening to us as a people. All of these, I feel, are chains of learned behavior that have to be broken, because you're absolutely right. We do have music out there. We have all kinds of people that think, well, this is the way that we're supposed to be. And this is how, this is how you make the money. You promote yourself like this, and you dollar bill, y'all. And this is how we get on it. And we out here, we thug life and all this stuff. And this is learned behavior. And they don't see it as something wrong, because this is what they're taught to be. So you can't expect them to be any different than what they're being taught.
May I say something about the, and I'm going to differ, which I don't do that often. I'm going to differ with Dr. Margaret with the idea of glorifying. I believe that much of the music that that's being stereotyped as glorifying is simply telling a message or telling a story that they believe is not being heard. And they're being creative and artistic in terms of the way it is that they express it, and passionate, because of course they've got a great deal of passion. But in essence, they are voicing something in such a way that they believe it will finally be heard. More than anything, I think that there is an outcry that happens not only in the music, but even in the protests that are happening, that is saying, you don't hear me. And they're continuing to scream it louder and in different ways to make sure that somebody finally pays attention and hears them. And this is not new. I mean, the reality of it is that we've had people trying to find ways of getting our message out for centuries, right? I don't think that the young people that are doing, I don't care if you're talking about the hip hop generation or whatever, I don't think that what they're doing is glorifying their circumstances. I believe that they're telling their message and then being celebrated by those that said, yep, you got it right. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm feeling. That's what I'm going through. That's my existence.
Can you give me an example? Give me an example.
No, I'm not going to try to do that, because I don't know the lyrics well enough to do that. To be able to.
What do you think, Minister McNeil? I know that you know a little about the young people and what they're listening to and things like that. Do you feel like that behavior is being glorified, or are they just crying out for help? What do you think is going on?
Unfortunately, when we look at who's in control of the music industry, right? We're not in control. Okay, it's not strange that for those hip hop artists, and this has been consistent throughout the history of hip hop, the hip hop artists who had positive messages, uplifting messages, were always in the minority, while the hip hop artists that told stories, I'm going to use doctors' language, told stories of violence, of their poverty, of all of these destructive, dysfunctional behaviors. They got more radio play. They got more fame. They got more attention. I just don't think that's by accident. I think it's very strange that it's okay to talk about how many black men you're going to kill and how many women you're going to have sex with. That's completely acceptable. I dare you come on there and talk about how many animals you're going to kill.
Right.
Double dog dare you say, yeah, I'm about to kill and put this dog on barbed wire. You'll have PETA and all these other organizations take that off the radio and so on and so forth. We have an NFL player who was at the height. He was the face of the NFL. That's what he was. He rented out a house. They could not connect him to the crime, but somehow, some way, the most powerful person ends up going to prison. How did that happen? For dogs. For dogs. It's absurd. So we see how the priorities of mainstream are. The priorities are, we want you to continue this cycle of, now I'm going to use this word, glorification of violence and criminal behavior and sexual promiscuity and perverseness. We're going to celebrate, give that the most attention, give that the most support, to put that out there. And when someone is positive, like a Common, like Talib Kweli and these brothers, their fame only goes so much. It only goes so high, and then it's like, okay, we're done with you. We need Lil Wayne. We need Lil Wayne up there. We have this video of these young women that has a video that's very sexually provocative. I have not heard it. I probably won't hear it. I hear it's getting a lot of attention, right? But it's just very interesting. Yes, you know what I'm talking. The priorities that we have when it comes to the hip hop music. I just don't think it's an accident. And when we start talking about white supremacy, we understand that it exists in every system in America, covertly or overtly, however you want to describe it. It exists. And these messages are not by accident. I believe it was Carter G. Woodson that says that if you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about controlling his actions. I believe the Bible says that as a man thinketh, so is he. So we start talking about our behaviors that are destructive, right? We were taught that. That's This is one of the consequences of white supremacy, right? We look at the families from the 1960s, the mother, the father, and the children. Everybody was there. Watch this, in poverty. We had less money, we had less freedom, we had less opportunity, but we were a family. Now all of a sudden, we 50 years later, and 75% of our mothers are single parents. I was raised by a single mother. My mother did a fantastic job on me. That's what I'm gonna tell you. On me. I don't tell anybody that. But I missed out on some things. I needed my father. I'm not placing blame. I'm talking about a system that created division. That created a vision and a destruction and a dismantling of the home. And we're seeing the effects of that every day. Now, when we start talking about the looting and the rioting, and I definitely appreciate the perspective of Jane Elliott said that a people that are constantly oppressed, it starts to change their psychology. Start to change the way they start to think. I think that's very, very real. So when we start talking about mental illness and post-traumatic stress of Black people, yeah, we all need some counseling and some help. I agree with you 100%. I wouldn't argue with anybody on that. At the same time, we also must talk about if we're going to talk about mental illness and talk about this understanding, we must also talk about moral order. We can't have one without the other. We can't have justice without righteousness. We can't have love without truth. We can't have social justice without moral order. I remember when there was the rioting, and I know you guys can speak to this more than I am because I'm younger. But I remember seeing clips that the rioting happened in Watts for the civil rights movement. Rioting happened in Chicago, right? And Dr. Martin Luther King comes on television, a news telecast, and while he gives an explanation, right, he says the rioting is the language of the voiceless, right? Wow. Powerful. We understand. He also came back and said, however, this does not help progress the movement. This does not help the Black agenda. And what disappoints me about BLM in this particular moment, what disappoints me is the lack of leadership, right? The Bible talks about, I believe it's Proverbs 29:18, without the prophetic vision or leadership, the people are without restraint, right? I think we're seeing the consequences of a lack of leadership. It's not that the rioting happens. It was that there was no leadership to come behind and says, listen, I understand. I love you. No.
Wait a minute, back up. What do you mean?
I do believe that you might be misrepresenting something here, because the message that I've heard regarding the leadership for Black Lives Matter didn't endorse any way whatsoever the violence and looting that was going on. However, there were definitely those that were agitators that actually came in with the intent of corrupting the message that Black Lives Matter was presenting, and they were not being held accountable for their portrayal of as though they were part of the movement when they weren't. They were there to corrupt the movement.
So
May I just say something about that? Addressing that, sir. As far as the leadership of Black Lives Matter, you are a part of the leadership of Black Lives Matter. We are all part of the leadership of Black Lives Matter. It's not like the NAACP. The Black Lives Matter is a movement that says your life matters, my life matters. We're all responsible as far as the leadership is concerned. So that's an indictment against all of us.
So unfortunately, I don't. Let me respond. I don't agree with that. I don't. I don't agree. I don't agree with. I support their fight against police brutality. I support
Who is there?
BLM. I support and I stand behind. I've marched in my various marches, Black Lives Matter. I love the mantra and all that, but they are an organization unto themselves. That's one. They have their own organization. They have a website of their own. They have their own doctrine and ideology. You can look it up. You don't have to believe me. Also, I did not. I apologize if I.
Did you at any point see in those doctrines those doctrines or websites that you went to, did you see any endorsements for the looting and the violence that was
happening? If you allow me to respond, I will. I'll respond.
Okay.
I also did not. I want to apologize if I said something to insinuate that they were involved. That was not my suggestion. I didn't imply that they were involved or somehow they created this rioting and looting. That's not what I said. What I said was I would have appreciated if someone from leadership would have came behind and gave some clear leadership and things like that. Obviously, I don't think they were involved, but they do have the platform, to speak to this situation in somewhat of a constructive way while giving understanding and giving some construction and some leadership. That's my intent.
Okay, so
thirdly, let me answer this. I'm just going to answer this your question you just asked, and then I'll stop speaking. Thirdly, there was a woman who represented Black Lives Matter Chicago leadership. I don't know the depths of her involvement, but she was being represented on the news as a leader of Black Lives Matter, the Chicago chapter. Thank you. And her name was Ariel, I think Ariel Anita or something like that. And I didn't believe it until I heard it with my own 2 ears and watched the video myself. And her words were, the looting and the rioting is a form of reparations. That's what she said. You can look this up. Her name is Ariel. I have to get her last name. I'll get her last name, and you can look it up yourself. I watched several clips of it because I thought that was appalling. I thought first of all, looting and rioting will never, ever, ever, in any way, shape, form, or fashion, take the place of reparations.
No,
my ancestors, my ancestors who built this country on their back, will not be repaid by breaking into buildings and stealing stuff. I do not accept that. I vehemently do not accept any form of language that would say looting and rioting is a reparations for what my ancestors suffered, bled, and died for. I take that extremely offensively, and I was greatly insulted by that. That's wrong. Unfortunately, that's what she said. I'll get her last name, and it would have been, in my opinion, very, very, I thought it was a great moment for her or anyone in that leadership position to give some leadership while giving, like you're sharing. You're giving an understanding. Listen, of people that have been oppressed and ravaged, how you expect them to behave. She could have spoke to that. She didn't. She spoke to this, basically an encouragement of it. And it was very hurtful. It was very hurtful. That's just the truth. I'll get her last name for you, though. Okay.
If I could just say one thing, I know Dr. Mark wants to say something as well. You started talking about the conspiracy, or not conspiracy, you didn't call it conspiracy, but the systemic control that white supremacy has in infiltrating things or whatever. Well, part of that media exposure seems to be not focused, not targeted on the messages that are in fact positive. But when it is, if we're talking about the movement of Black Lives Matter, where I think Dr. Margaret was coming from, is that the reason why it's been a global response to this scenario is it was steered by, I should say, ignited by the visual horror that happened with George Floyd, to the point that they said that man's life mattered. That was horrible what happened to him. And we witnessed his life being taken away from us right there on there. Okay. The reality of it is that if we don't celebrate, if we don't support a movement, not in any way whatsoever endorsing looting or violence, but if we're not supporting a movement that not only echoes that our lives matter, then the ones that are trying to corrupt this movement by tearing up things, by causing violence, inciting things, they win. Now, the message that you said that she put out there was definitely not something that helped the movement to be seen in a positive light. And the truth of the matter is that we don't always say the things it is that we should have said given the moment to say it. Sometimes our best self is just not ready. Okay, and we're not camera ready, mic ready, or anything ready. And then somebody says, "What do you think?" And then you say something you shouldn't have said. Okay, maybe that was the moment for her. I don't know. I don't know exactly what provoked her to say what she said. I'm saying I don't agree with it. I think you're right. It was definitely not helpful in any way whatsoever to justify or try to make that appalling act of looting and violence associated with reparations for African Americans. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. But all I'm saying is that what I don't want us to do is to get with the people who oppose Black Lives Matter as something that is a criminal element, that is against America, based upon the comments of a few.
Right.
And so what I'm saying is, it's the same thing as people saying that all police are corrupt because of what's happened with a few. So what I'm saying is we shouldn't do that with Black Lives Matter either. She doesn't represent all of Black Lives Matter. You just said yourself, you can go on the website and see that that is not something that's condoned. You see what I'm saying? By Black Lives Matter as a whole.
I don't know. That's my.
But you said you've been on the website.
Yes, I didn't speak to whether they abhor the looting and rioting.
Oh, okay.
As far as their ideology, looting and rioting, I haven't seen anything specific to that, for or against it.
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think that the primary premise of Black Lives Matter is just that, let's just take the words for what it is. Black Lives Matter. You know, and so, and you will have those people, you will have those voices that come out who don't know what it is that they should say or whatever. But I'm saying, let's not go with the other people who are against Black Lives Matter and say their talking points and give them power and credit, because this is right now, Black Lives Matter, whether you want to accept it or not, has given us the attention that we need to even have this conversation the way we're having it.
Sure.
You know, that the NFL is paying attention, that the NBA is paying attention, that our companies are paying attention, that corporations are saying, yes, Black Lives Matter. I say we need to embrace this moment and then see what we can get out of it as a people, and not just for African Americans, but people of color all over the globe now. People in Russia, I'm not Russia, I'm not going that far, but people in England are saying Black Lives Matter. Japanese, Black Lives Matter. You know what I'm saying? It's fist practice and everything.
A referendum for Black Lives Matter.
I'm sorry?
This seems like this has turned into a referendum for the support or not support for Black Lives Matter.
I
what are you talking about?
This
show, or you talking about the whole
the conversation?
This conversation.
Yeah,
conversation. Right. With me being the host, I want to bring this back around and say this. I think that one of the points that Minister McNeil was trying to make was that he felt like there was a missed opportunity for leaders to speak out about what our response should have done and to speak against what actually did happen in regards to the rioting, the tearing of, that there was a missed opportunity there. Now, I think what Reverend Margaret, Dr. Reverend Margaret Jamal is saying that we all have the opportunity to open our mouths in regards to this, because Black Lives Matter has become so much bigger than just an organization. It has become a movement. So I guess my point is, and speaking to what you're saying, Minister McNeil, it's come to sounding the way that it's sounding is because it is what we're talking about, and that is that Black Lives Matter, and that's why we're having this discussion, and that's why the damage relationship between the minority communities and the police. This is the message at the forefront, and you yourself, I know, support it. I know you yourself was out there, fighting with people and encouraging this message. So I think that what needs to happen is maybe more of us could take more responsibility of the entire movement as a whole. That, this is not just an organization with a website. This is about your life matters. This is my life matters. This is people's lives matter. All of our lives matter, and we all have to speak up for that. So for example, you're right. You don't have the platform that person has. Nevertheless, if all of us speak loud enough, like we have been, about our lives mattering, then we can all say together, this is not the way to do it. So let's get into some more solution-based conversation. If this isn't the way to do it, what is the way to do it? How are we heard? How do we repair this relationship?
Asia, one of the things that I think goes under acknowledged is that the way we were actually able to draw attention to what happened to George Floyd was because a young girl took her phone and used it for something more powerful than anybody even imagined. She took that phone and captured what was happening and then shared it in such a way that it ended up going around the world. No one who knew when she got that phone it was going to be used to send a message around the world that would bring about the change that is at least being talked about at this point. Okay. It's still in the forming stages, but at least she did something. She didn't just sit there and say, that's a shame. She took her phone and did something with it. Okay. The reality of it is that we all have something, be it a voice, be it a phone. We all have something to work with. And if we decide to act upon that thing that we see that is wrong by exposing it, speaking about it, doing something positive, we can bring about change. I don't think anybody is saying that young lady who took the picture should now be our next president. That's not necessarily her competencies at this point, but they're saying at this point what she did mattered because she showed the world how badly Black lives are being valued in this country and exposed it. Okay, so you said, what can we do positive? Right. I think we can continue to share those messages, share those stories, be intentional in acting on a positive about what it is that we see and injustice, where we see an injustice. Don't just sit back and be a bystander, but be active and actually get involved.
Even just like Minister Joe was saying, we do not promote the positive as much as we should.
That's right.
And I agree with everybody. We should give more credit to people who are doing it. But I realized something when you look at it, and I'm thinking, and I'm really asking, why is it that we tend to, and I still think, glorify the negative, the violence, the promiscuity that ends up, that leads people to think that this is who we are? Why is it? somehow the media has made it more interesting. I think that we have to find ways to um, to expose each other to the phenomenalness of doing good.
Mhm.
More so. In other words, when we hear some good stuff, why don't we start sharing it more and taking that responsibility? For some reason, it's like the people that have the negative agenda are wise enough and smart enough to promote the negative agenda that they're about. Why don't we stop being so lazy about promoting the good? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, just like you were saying before, we need to look at the police as individuals. We need to look at each other as individuals. We as individuals can encourage other individuals to promote and give more exposure and more celebration for those things that are good, but in an exciting way. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm saying, even like when you go to church, you try to get people to go to church, right? If
Right.
you remember, you used to say, Asia, we tried to get you to watch some stuff, and you said, Mom, that's boring. I said, what do you mean? You said, it's snoring boring. I remember that all these years. Nobody wants to go to a boring church. And even when you talk about Jesus, when you look in the scriptures, he wasn't snoring boring. He was exciting. He did miracles. He did stuff. You know what I'm saying? He didn't just like, everybody come hear me say a few words. And so I'm saying even the churches that people visit is where people are dynamic and people are big. I'm saying, this is what I'm saying. We need to be as demonstrative about those good things when we're sharing with people. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, we're not boring people, right?
Right. Right. I agree with you. I think I do understand what you're saying. Just I think that actually would help promote that unity and repairing the relationship with the police departments and the minority communities, because like Minister McNeil here and several other police officers are out there being a part of the positivity. They are being a part of assisting the communities and helping. And I'm not even sure of everything that you guys have been doing, but part of that is because it's not being promoted enough. So I completely agree with you on that. And in fact, while you have the platform to do so, Minister McNeil, would you like to share with people what you guys have been doing with for the communities for dealing with this?
But be exciting and interesting. Rap. Can you rap it?
Sure. I did want to give my final thoughts on the conversation regarding BLM. In the last show, I said, and you can, Asia, remember this. I said that we should be able to work together even though we have differences. I think about how Stokely Carmichael and Martin Luther King, who had diametrically opposed views on how to fight for social justice, walked together on this, I believe it was a Memphis road for justice after a young man was killed. And I believe the same stands for us. So I say that to say that just because I'm critical doesn't mean that I'm not marching right along. I don't think the idea, we have this in our new culture, this new age culture that says that if I don't agree with you 100%, that I 100% hate you. I don't subscribe to that type of thinking. I choose to be critical of the things that I'm involved in, critical of the world that I live in, while even being supportive of it, while doing my part and trying to make it better. And because if something is working, while I don't agree with it in totality, if it's working, I need to do my part so that it's successful. But I don't have to agree with it 100%. And so that's my position. I was telling my brother one day, I don't agree with myself 100% most of the time. So I think that's probably one thing I agree with 100% of the time, and that's the Bible. That's about it. So I mean, other than that, I'm very critical. I'm very critical of whatever that I'm involved in, not for the sake of being critical, but for the sake of doing what I can to make it better, to make it more productive, to make sure that it's successful. Having said all that, relating to the things that we're doing at Living Grace in particular, we have a mentoring program where we're going to bring young people in to mentor them in particular areas of vocation, from plumbing to electrical to entrepreneurship. Obviously, police officer and firefighter also involved in those areas. We also have the food depository, so we've been giving away a bunch of food while people are dealing with this pandemic and dealing with poverty. I think food should be the last thing someone is concerned about with the little funky $1,200 that folk got for 6 months from yours, from the POTUS. Is completely absurd. But but so we are trying to make sure that we care for the community, that we respond to the needs of the community at Living Grace Church.
Yes, and Living Grace Church is my church as well. I ask is what he's doing as well and assisting with helping the community during this time.
Say that again. You broke up.
You broke up.
I'm sorry. I said, what are the police doing as well in assisting the community during this time?
Actually, in the village of Dalton, we have also been giving out food. We've been visiting the elderly, checking up on them. We have particular homes and families that have issues when it comes to poverty. We just have so many people in need. It's very difficult to get to everyone because everyone doesn't communicate to us. So, that's another, barrier that we have to deal with. But as far as, being present and making sure that we're responding particularly to the elderly, but to the needs community when it comes regards to food. And that's actually been spearheaded by Mayor Riley Rogers.
Okay.
Cool.
That's great. That's great. And I wanted to know also, do you guys have opportunities for people to volunteer, assist in the efforts to help with the communities right now?
Absolutely. It normally it's on Saturdays, Saturday mornings at the Melanie Fitness. I believe it's around 8 or 9 o'clock. And that's when they're out, service the community. And at the same time, they're interacting, seeing what other needs, areas need some assistance, so it goes beyond the food, but it's a great opportunity.
Okay, that's good. How do people get information on that?
Go to the Village of Dalton website. They also have on Facebook, Village of Dalton. So I think it's villageofdalton.org is the website, and you can go on Facebook, just put in Village of Dalton, and it'll pop up with all the information.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I just want people to know I intentionally last time I did call this a special edition. I'm giving us to 10:30 to address this because I felt like an hour was not enough time to talk about all this, and it's still not enough time to be perfectly frank with everybody. But the fact of the matter is, what I want this platform to be about at all times is positivity and coming together and being able to come up with positive solutions and to promote things to get better, to do better, to respect each other, to love on each other, to encourage each other. That's what I want done on this platform. So I appreciate the fact that you guys decided to come together today to discuss all these various different sides. And one thing that I feel that we agreed on is that we do need to promote more of the positivity. And I think that will help in at least start to bridge some gaps, because Dr. Aaron Jamal said this is going to take time. This is definitely not an overnight project. And repairing this relationship. Unfortunately, when it comes to the saying that they say, and I'll go ahead and let you speak as soon as I say this, and they say one bad apple doesn't spoil the whole bunch. Unfortunately, that's the feel of what's been going on both sides when it's dealing with African Americans and dealing with the police. That's going on, and we need to handle this differently. Just have to come in agreement with what the different looks like. Go ahead, Dr. Jamal.
Well, I was just going to say we have made some progress. I just want to bring everybody's attention to the Trayvon Martin scenario that actually spearheaded the movement Black Lives Matter. That's what they were responding to, is what happened there with the injustice of Trayvon Martin. And when that thing happened, it was an outcry, but it was not the concerted efforts to do something that happened with George Floyd. So we may not see, we didn't see exactly the same footage, right, with regard to Trayvon Martin. This time we had footage, and
Right.
this time I believe the country was at a different place where they were the tolerance level for that kind of activity was just not accepted. And so there is growth. I think there is growth. I think we have much more to do. I think it is a systemic problem that deals with issues that are not being addressed right now. Even I would say the area that I think is most neglected right now is the area regarding home ownership. There are concerted efforts needed to bring Black people into. I'm saying Black people in particular because there was a systemic um, denial, if you will, of our ability to actually excel and actually acquire homes so that we can actually have family wealth. You know, if it is that you own a home and your children can come up and actually inherit the home, then you begin to build on that wealth. So if it is that we're going to have concerted efforts and things like that that actually help African Americans to begin to have homes, and not just homes in the quote unquote ghetto, but homes in areas where they have the other and things like education, all the things that everybody would want for themselves and their children. When those efforts are made affordable for targeting African Americans, I believe that the change is going to happen it's going to accelerate at that point.
And I believe that the churches need to be more involved. I think that the churches need to be more involved with community action. Right now, as people are hurting, and just you mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said that we are supposed to be the conscience of the community,
And never the tool.
yeah, and so when you have people who are not afraid out there in the community telling people that we're with you, I'd like to see a lot more presence of the church community. You think about it, there's a body of believers. If you can just imagine all of those believers out there instead of just the moms, which is just fine with the wall of moms and then all of the people, the church is out there with people praying, in encouraging the love, encouraging the peaceful protest. I'd like to see, to me, when you talked about the lack of leadership, that's the lack of leadership that really concerns me. And
But giving credit where it's due, we serve in Cornerstone Christian Family Church. Our Cornerstone Family Church has a pastor, Pastor Dan Berry, who has been active. I want to give credit where it's due. He has stepped out there, even to the point of actually, with some of the congregants that weren't in favor of his stance, has left, right? And he still continued to do that and recognizing and acknowledging injustice where it was, in an attempt to build bridges so that people could come together. His intent was not to destroy things, but actually to set things right, and to build bridges so that people come together. And it's still happening. He still does that. So I'll give credit where it's due. He is definitely encouraging as far as the church is concerned with regard to leadership.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist.
That's with Grace.
Say it again.
I said also Pastor France at Living Grace has been very active in the community and doing the thing as well.
Yes, and those are the things that I'm saying that people need to see more of. That's what I'm talking about.
And this is what I'm speaking to about leadership. There are several churches that have been on the ground since Trayvon and Mike Brown. Remember, those are really the two instances that really kicked off this new kind of social justice movement. Matter of fact, with the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson, the church was there well before BLM showed up. The reality is the church is not getting the same platform. The church is not getting the same attention. Father Flager, Hope Church in Hope area, pastored by Senator Meeks. They have a beautiful youth ministry there. Pastor Jonathan Reynolds. I know of a number of churches that are on the ground, involved in demonstrations, in walks, in bike rides. I mean, you name it, but they're not going to be on TV because they don't have that platform. In my opinion, which is the reason why I remain critical, is because it's the church, and the church are not necessarily wanted in this new movement. And
I think that if the church approached it in a different way, like you said, we talked about that church, we talked about one church, we talked about a church here. But imagine what happened with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The reason that they got the attention is because it wasn't this church over here and this church over here. It was churches coming together. And that is what I'm seeing as part of our biggest challenge is, yeah, we're doing this in our community. We're doing this over here. We need to show our churches unified in the effort. And that's when you're going to see the media cover.
Unfortunately, that's not correct. I went to a Victory Apostolic Church in Madison, Illinois. There were several churches there. We had.
Well, I'm not talking about a movement. A movement is not an event. You have to keep it going until it's.
If you allow me to speak, I'll just make my comment and then I'll stop talking.
Okay. Did you stop it?
No, I didn't. There was also when we spearheaded our own march with several churches, with the NAACP, and with several business owners. I'm telling you, I'm not telling you what I think. I'm telling you what I know because I'm on the ground. I've been a part of it. The church is not getting the same media attention. I'm sorry if that's new to some, but it's the reality.
We're not disagreeing.
The church is not getting the media attention, and that's just the truth of it. So to ask the church to step in a position of leadership, the platform must be available, and it's not. There's no access. The church is not giving the access. I'm talking about movements or events where there were Kim Fox, there was the Cook County president, the governor was there. I mean, so it's like, why isn't the church getting more attention? There's something too. All I'm asking is we have to start thinking critically of why hasn't the church been giving the same attention when they are involved? Father Flagler is always involved. So I mean,
and we know about Father Flagler because Father Flagler is good with media.
Right, Father Flagler has done more than what the media has shown. I guarantee.
Right, so have a number of people. What I'm saying, all I'm saying about this is that we need to be more involved with the media and just develop ways in order to access the media in order to be in front. We just have to be wise about it.
It's not that simple.
Just like Jesus, just follow Jesus. Jesus didn't have to go to the media. They came to him.
The media follows money. The media follows influence. They just don't show up because something happened. They show up with an agenda in mind. Just like we talked about the music, that is an agenda in mind to have certain music get more attention than others. So I'm just someone that I constantly think critically about what's going on in our culture, and I refuse to be blind to.
I'm a critical thinker.
I want to be involved.
I'm a critical thinker as well, and I heard you say that you believe what the Bible says. You said you agree with that 100%. With what the Bible says, correct? Okay.
Which is the reason I believe the church is not involved.
Jesus prayed, and I imagine you would want to come in agreement with a prayer from Jesus, right? He prayed that we would come together on one accord. That's all we're talking about. That's all we're talking about. We're not saying contingent on whether or not the media gives us attention or not. We're saying if we come together on one accord through that movement, then wonderful things will happen, regardless of whether or not the media follows, in our early stages or whatever. If we come together on one accord, then God's power will make it happen.
Indeed.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're all in disagreement. I think we are all in agreement in the fact that yes, we all recognize that the church is involved. We all recognize also, I feel, because I know that you know this, because I speak to them on a regular basis, talking about Dr. Karen and Margaret Mall, that the church does not have the same platform as others have. Sure. But I think we also can agree that we can make a more powerful movement if we're able to come together more as a body. I think
Yes.
is the bottom line. If we all come together as a body, because there's churches all over the place doing things, helping the communities that are very active in the communities. But you know how wonderful, how powerful it would be if all of us could come together in one accord and
Even
say,
most of us.
"Hey, let's collectively do this."
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's
If
what's
you
really
make the
being
noise, if
said
you
here,
make
and
the
I don't
noise
think
big enough, the media will follow.
My point is there is a concerted effort to keep the church out. It
I
is.
agree.
It
I
is.
agree.
Greater is he
That's
that's in
in
me than
yes.
he
Yeah.
who's
I got
in
you.
me.
There's always been a
Right,
concerted
right.
effort to keep the church
That's
out.
my point. We are fighting against a demonic force. So what I say that to say this, to
Fighting them.
make
Yeah.
mention of what the church is not doing just isn't. I'm sorry, it just isn't.
I did not say that. Please don't misquote me.
Okay.
Did I say the church was
That's
not
not what
doing?
You said the church needed more leadership, and
And I
didn't agree with
stand
that.
by that. You don't
I
agree
don't
with
agree.
that?
I think the church is involved. The church has been leading, and because we don't see it, we have this illusion that it's not happening, and it is
I
happening.
never said that. Don't
Okay.
misquote me.
Okay.
No,
All
I
right.
think she's in agreement with you in the fact that the churches are out there doing things and are out there and leading in efforts. I think her point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Margaret, I think her point is that we can make more noise and that our movement can be even greater if we all came together as a body. I
And
think
it should
that
be
is what
much
she's saying.
bigger. Do you think this is the best we can do? I think this is a fraction of what we can do. And if we were as
Right.
passionate and as present as the other people that we're talking about that's being promoted, yeah, we'll make some noise.
Mhm. Yeah, we can always do better. I know we can do better. And everybody watched
Thank you for
Minister
better.
do better. And anybody that's watched Minister McNeil preach, you know that he knows how to make some noise himself. So
I saw him preach. I saw it. I saw him on your church. I saw it.
yes, something else. It needs something else.
That's right.
But yeah, you know, we can, all of us can do better. And we are past that time which I allowed for and I felt was necessary. But I feel like all of us could continue this conversation. But I think that what I would like us to do, for all of you guys that are watching and listening, I do have a website. The website is asiajamal.com or .net. Either one. I own them both. Thank you very much. You can go either way. When you come on the site, you'll see a tab that says Asia Speaks. On that tab, I speak on the topics that we address, and I also place links on my website to those organizations that are helping causes. So if we can continue even offline, discuss who is helping and doing positive things and that would like assistance and get more volunteers out there, then I can post that information on my site and, you know, use our platforms so we can get that information out there and be more unified in our efforts. Can we all do that?
And I apologize. I'm very, very protective of the church. And it's when I go online, the church is so run down. You just have no idea. The church is so run down. They just come at the church so hard online. I mean,
we are the church.
and,
You know,
Yeah.
as you're being protected,
I know
we
I
are
probably
the church.
spend too much time online. That's why I need to get off Facebook as much as I am, because they really hurt. And let me say this: I'm not talking about secular people.
Okay.
Most of my friends are believers.
Okay.
So it's just, I be
Yeah.
like, why we always got to come at the church here? So I apologize.
It's all right.
Well,
We all on the same team. We all on the same team here. Right.
I- yes, we lift each other up.
Okay. I was just like,
And it's past our bedtime. Why are you having us up so late? My pillow is calling me.
and now the
I'm going to be punished.
Lord.
It was fun.
Anyway, I thank you guys so much for joining me again and having this conversation. I appreciate your contribution. I hope to communicate with you guys more later, and maybe we can have some more offline talks about how we can do some more unified efforts in a positive direction.
We look forward
So,
to it. Look forward to working with you, Minister. God is good.
God is good all the time.
Indeed.
All the time.
Be blessed.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Love you first.
Good night.
Bye-bye. You too.
I know.